Hello everyone, it's Dietitian Andrea here. When patients tell me they get bloated, I ask them what they ate, and they will either say legumes, nuts, seeds, vegetables, or gluten from wheat, which is lectin. And don't worry if you don't know what a lectin is, that is one of the things that we are going to talk about today. You never hear somebody complain about getting bloated after eating a steak. Am I right or am I right? We know plants have defense mechanisms against herbivory and other organisms that want to eat them. And that's not even the whole story. As you know, vegetables are very high in fiber, and too much fiber can overwhelm the GI tract. In addition, we need enzymes to digest vegetables, and at the same time, we lack other ones. For example, humans are unable to digest cellulose from plants or vegetables because we do not have the enzymes to break down the beta acetal linkages. So too much cellulose can be quite inflammatory. Of course, I'm not saying to neglect vegetables. I'm already picturing the 12-year-old kid going to his mom, vegetables are bad and that's why I'm never going to eat broccoli ever again. No, that's not what I'm saying. Vegetables can be beneficial because they have vitamins and minerals, and also they provide food for the beneficial bacteria in your GI tract that protect you from harmful bacteria and also help you absorb nutrients. So it's a 50-50 kind of thing here. Vegetables are okay, but not too much. So each person will be able to tolerate a determined amount of vegetables. Some patients are able to eat 2 cups of salad without a problem, while others can barely eat half a cup without getting bloated. So that's what I want to discuss today, because if you understand these not so good compounds in plants and how fiber plays a role in your digestion, then you're going to be able to play around with the amounts so that you don't have any problems eating vegetables. Because a lot of people make the mistake of switching to a vegan or vegetarian diet, meaning only plants, because they believe that is the healthiest diet, when in fact that can put a lot of stress in the body. Why do I say this? First, this stress can be due to lacking the enzymes needed to break down the components in vegetables, such as cellulose, or eating too much fiber that can overwhelm the GI tract and cause a lot of fermentation. Second, plants have compounds, which are the not so good compounds that literally steal the nutrients from other foods, especially minerals. I am going to explain in detail everything you need to know about plants, their not so good compounds, and their digesting role. I need you to pay careful attention. And why do I say this? Because some people might not even know what an enzyme is. So if it's too overwhelming, I recommend you to pause the video and come back whenever you're ready, or if you need to pause the video and stare at the screen for 2 minutes, do so. But you need to understand everything that I am about to say. Because if you are suffering from digestive issues or problems, this can greatly help you. This is what I work with my patients, and we get amazing results. So if you are ready, let's start. The not so good compounds in plants include phytoestrogens, phytic acid, lectins, enzyme inhibitors, and oxalates. Let's start with lectins. So what are lectins? Lectins are plant proteins that have been found to act as glycoproteins in the body, meaning a protein that can attach to a carbohydrate or a membrane glycosyl group of the cells in the digestive tract of humans. Some foods that contain higher amounts of lectins include beans, peanuts, lentils, tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, fruits, and grains such as gluten from wheat. Lectins serve a protective function for plants as they grow and also to protect themselves from predators. That is why you might have heard to pre-soak or sprout your legumes and nuts. But the problem is that these techniques do not completely inactivate lectins. They are able to overpass human digestion, thus they are not inactivated and bind or attach to cells lining the GI tract. And did you know gluten is a lectin? Lectins break down your gut lining, leaving a hole in that protective layer and allowing in other substances, which may cause leaky gut. And this makes sense as gluten is directly correlated to leaky gut. But the really disturbing finding came with the discovery in 1989 that some food lectins get past the gut wall and deposit themselves in distant organs. We know that lectins cross into our bloodstream because healthy people have antibodies to lectins in their blood. In the bloodstream, lectins can bind to red blood cells, causing them to clump together, or agglutinate. And yes, you may have noticed it sounds very similar to gluten. One of the most nutritionally important features of plant lectins is their ability to survive digestion by the GI tract of consumers, like we previously said. This allows the lectins to bind to membrane glycosyl groups of the cells lining the digestive tract. As a result of this interaction, a series of harmful local and systemic reactions are triggered, placing this class of molecules as anti-nutritive and/or toxic substances. Locally, they can affect the turnover and loss of gut epithelial cells, which are the cells that line and protect your GI tract, damage the luminal membranes of the epithelium, interfere with nutrient digestion and absorption, stimulate shifts in the bacterial flora, and modulate the immune state of the digestive tract. Systemically, they can disrupt lipid, carbohydrate, and protein metabolism, promote enlargement and/or atrophy of key internal organs and tissues, and alter the hormonal and immunological status. This other study mentions how lectins act as plant defense and they can overpass our gut without being inactivated. As you can see, this is something that pops up in every study. In many experimental studies, they have seen lectins can be extremely toxic. It has been found that kidney bean lectin can damage our gut lining cells, which can lead to bacterial overgrowth and impaired nutrient absorption. Lectins can also bind to our immune cells and cause them to clump together, weakening our immune system. These would be examples of high lectin foods, and we can see that legumes, nuts, seeds, and some fruits and veggies are quite high. And then we have our low lectin foods, and legumes are pretty high in lectins, so they cannot count as low in lectins. However, we have some alternatives to nuts, seeds, oils, and veggies and fruits. So I would recommend to either pause or take a screenshot of these foods. Our next compound is phytic acid, and this one is the storage form of phosphorus in plants. Phytates are chelators found in beans, grains, and other seeds, and they bind and block proper absorption of iron, zinc, calcium, and other minerals. Once bound, they are then excreted in waste. So when consuming foods high in minerals, your absorption will be impaired. In the plant kingdom, phytates serve two primary functions. They prevent premature germination and they store the phosphorus that plants need to grow. Phytates are valuable to humans because they allow us to store seeds safely over the winter. But a potential problem appears when we want to eat those seeds, grains, and beans. The way phytates deactivate the life force is by binding tightly with minerals. Advocates for plant-based diets often point out the high mineral content of their foods, but rarely take into account how phytate content might affect their assimilation. And actually, zinc is particularly affected. And these would be examples of high phytate foods, but usually high phytate foods include grains, nuts, and legumes. And then we have oxalates, which I think a lot of people are familiarized with because of kidney stones. And similar to phytic acid, oxalic acid acts as protection against herbivory, and it is a mineral thief, acting as a magnet for minerals, especially calcium. Oxalic acid grabs calcium and forms calcium oxalate, the main ingredient in kidney stones. These oxalate crystals build up into bigger and bigger crystals, and they bioaccumulate. As they accumulate, the body deposits these sharp crystals throughout the body in joints, muscles, and especially in the kidneys. And then foods high in oxalates would be baked potato with the skin, soy flour, navy beans, beets, cocoa powder, brown rice, millet, French fries, cashews or jams, and many others, but I just wanted to name the most common foods that people tend to eat. And then we have the extremely high content of oxalates, and these would be spinach, rhubarb, rice, buckwheat, almonds, and miso. Next are phytoestrogens, and these are quite interesting. Phytoestrogens are plant-derived that structurally and functionally mimic estrogens, and they can even exhibit birth control effects in insects. By achieving this birth control effect, phytoestrogens can hinder reproduction of insects and stop them from growing and eating the plant. Thus, the plant can survive. And this has been proven in many studies. Let's actually read this study. They are able to bind to estrogen receptors and to induce estrogenic or anti-estrogenic response in target tissues. And in fact, in practice, we recommend women who are at risk of breast cancer to limit soy as they work as weak estrogen mimics. And then here we can see that flax seeds, soy, and soy products, as well as multigrain bread, are the top phytoestrogen foods. SIBO, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, occurs when there is an excess bacteria amount in the small intestine, which can lead to flatulence, diarrhea, or even constipation, abdominal pain, nausea, and fatigue. People that suffer from this condition may feel better by decreasing fiber or even quitting fiber altogether. But it doesn't have to be just SIBO. Too much fiber will cause overfermentation and therefore an increment of too many microbes. And if someone eats a lot of plant foods high in fiber, they will be constantly bloated. The amount of fiber a person can ingest and digest will vary. Some people can eat more fiber than others without any symptoms, but always within normal limits, as overdoing fiber will cause overfermentation. Now, does this mean you have to completely avoid plants? Not at all, unless you react to those. There are people extremely sensitive to lectins, such as gluten, others to oxalates, and suffer from kidney stones. Others have low zinc levels, and they saw they were eating too many plants that were impairing their zinc absorption, while others are under cancer treatment and should avoid too many phytoestrogens in foods. Nevertheless, it would be smart not to overdo plants, considering the compounds already mentioned. The aim is to increase your awareness if you think you might be reacting to these foods, as well as explain why following an only plant-based diet can put quite the stress in the body and affect
nutrient absorption.